Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's book review time today and I'm diving back into the selection of titles that I'm reading for SPFBO. If you don't know what SPFBO is, I'll leave a link in the description box below this video so you can go and check out the competition in more detail, including all of the finer points on what it's about and what books are currently involved. And you can also follow the competition as it goes, looking at reviews for books as they're released and finding out first which books have been cut and which books have progressed through the competition. Today's spoiler-free review is for Fire of the Forebears by L.A. Buck. So Fire of the Forebears is the debut novel from author L.A. Buck, and it's the first book in a series called Heretor's Helm. We follow two main characters on opposite sides. Cura, who is the daughter of a deserter turned farmer and who finds herself kind of a little bit more embroiled in a rebellion than she maybe anticipated being. And then we have Tristan, who is the son of a king who is essentially sent out to quash that rebellion. And when the two storylines collide, the characters start to realise that the other is maybe not as bad as they had first thought. So what we get here is around 500 to 600 pages, depending on whether it's the ebook or the paperback that you're looking at, of good, solid fantasy. It's what I like to think of as proper fantasy. It's got all of the hallmarks of a classic fantasy story, but with a modern touch in terms of a writing style. Plenty of the epic fantasy staples are here. We've got rebellion, reluctant heroes, prophecy, good and bad types of magic, fantastic creatures, magic swords, created languages, and it's all pulled together really nicely so that everything fits into this world that's been created. And that's one of the immediate highlights of this story for me, the way that everything fits in a natural way. Nothing really seems out of place, but at the same time, nothing is just there for show. They all fit quite nicely into the story, but none of them are kind of individually overdone or as a whole overused. So the first thing we see right in chapter 1, which tells us a bit about this fantasy world, is when we have a man riding a talking bear, and that really set the scene quite nicely for me. From that we learn about the Noskaina, who are essentially talking animals. Not all animals are Noskaina, and those that can't talk are essentially looked down upon by those that can. So you start to get a bit of a feel from that of some of the little subtleties of this particular part of the world building. This isn't a replica of Narnia though. The Noskaina are known enough that they're not a surprise, but they don't seem to interact with people so much, at least in terms of the characters that we follow in the story. Then we have Saja, which are essentially Noskaina who have devoted their souls to the Crux, one of the two kind of elements of magic in this particular world. And by doing so, they amplify essentially their animalistic traits, which basically turns them into, for want of a better word, this world's monsters. There are also centaurs in this world, and I like how they're not just fantasy beasts to have in the background. These are actual named characters with family and history and agency of their own. So I think the fantastic beasts are a big plus point for the way that they're developed and the way that they fit into this world and this story without being overbearing at all. There's a good bit of lore here as well, and although I've not read them, there are, I believe, 2 prequel stories which dive into the history of this world a little bit more, but even without those I still feel that we get enough history organically delivered to us through the storytelling here. I think the magic here is also quite well done, and as mentioned before, there are 2 different kind of streams of it. There's good and there's bad magic. Like the Noskaina who becomes Saja, humans can also devote themselves to the Crux, the kind of bad side of the magic, and by doing so they become Vojaks, they become essentially immortals who can manipulate the elements. And then you've got the opposite of the Crux, which is the Essence, and likewise you have people who devote themselves to the Essence, and in this case humans who do that become Fidelis, who also have their own elemental powers. So there's quite a lot going on in this world, but that's all secondary really to the story, which hinges really on Cura's desire to break her family free from under the yoke of Draj, the king who she sees as being evil. I really like how family plays an important part in that. Fire of the Forebears for me is along the same lines as Zach Argyle's Threadlight in that respect. Family is not there just to give us an inciting incident to the story, it serves as an ongoing theme for Cora throughout the story, and also Tristan as well, but to a lesser extent. The characters overall are pretty well done. I really enjoyed the sections where I was reading about Cora. Tristan is maybe a little bit more formulaic, but is still a good character in his own right, and definitely had some good moments of his own in this story. There's also a decently sized cast of supporting characters, and with those there's a good balance between friends and enemies. And I think overall the interaction between the characters is generally well managed. Relationships and alliances do seem to happen quite organically in the story, they're definitely not rushed. There is a bit of happy coincidence that you get here and there throughout the story, but when they come up you can still see the odd little threads in the background, weaving them into the fabric of the overall story. Now, one thing I have seen about this book is reviews talking about the romance in it as if it's something that doesn't belong. I personally wouldn't even use romance as one of my lesser descriptors for the book. There are odd little mentions here and there about love in a romantic as opposed to familial sense, but there's no fully realised romance in here. All we get is natural human emotions and feelings. I don't mind a little bit of romance in a fantasy novel, but it's not one of the main components that I go for. If I was looking for that, I know there's a whole separate subgenre with hundreds upon hundreds of books ready to cater for my needs, but this isn't a book that belongs within that subgenre. The way I see it, love and hopefully romance is just a natural part of any world, and it's only right now and again to see it in these stories. Having the potential for love in the future against a backdrop of war and just the fight to survive in the here and now makes a story like this just that little bit more real. It adds heart without having to spell it out, and I really appreciate that. Overall, the solid writing and the good balanced pacing really keep the pages turning, to the point that I was able to finish this 600 page book in just 4 days. I thought that it had really good characters, world building and story, and also despite being a book one in a series, it's definitely something that I feel could be read as a standalone. I think there is quite a satisfying ending to the story, and it doesn't just finish with a bang, there is a good portion of falling action at the end of the book as well. It's not immediately obvious to me where the plot of book 2 in this series might take us, but I'm definitely interested in that second book regardless. One last thing I'll mention is that there is a glossary of characters, creatures and places on the author's website. It's linked in both the physical and digital copies of the book, and I'll leave a link as well in the description box below this video. That glossary is basically a wiki of the world that this book is based in. It's got a good search function, and each result has brief notes and also an author's pronunciation guide. The notes serve as a good reference point, so if you forget, for instance, who a minor character is, you can go there to quickly and easily find out, but any spoilers for the book or also the prequel novellas are hidden behind a spoiler gateway, so overall I think as an external feature it's really well done. There's also a couple of map options on the website, including an interactive version of the static map that you do get in both the digital and the physical copy of the book. So I definitely enjoyed and would recommend Fire of the Forebears, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If you've read it, leave me a comment down below, and if you haven't, go away and read it and then come back and let me know how you got on. That's all for this review. I hope you found it useful. I'll see you in the next video sometime soon, but until then, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.